But one of the things that Michigan did not have that would have probably made it difficult for them to win some games is a returning starting quarterback. They were down to Dylan McCaffrey and Joe Milton before they got the axe, which is my segue into how many teams have returning starting quarterbacks, and then how many teams have returning starting quarterbacks with the same play callers and or head coaches. Because the way that we take a look at those players and those teams needs to change in the age of the COVID. Because Todd Monken said something I thought was wild interesting. As he is the new offensive coordinator for the University of Georgia, and up until last week, he was overseeing a QB derby between JT Daniels, former five-star out of Mater Dei, transfer from USC, and Jamie Newman, whom I nicknamed store brand Cam Newton, who transferred from Wake Forest. Now, store brand Cam Newton was brought to Georgia by James Coley. James Coley was co-OC at UGA. He got fired. He's Texas A&M tight end coach now, so the one tie that store brand might have had to Georgia is at ampersand U. Then you bring in Todd Monken, who turned Wes Lunt and Oklahoma State into 550 yards a game, and who has proven that if you give him tailbacks, he can run them too. It's a good hire for a dude that is, even by coaching standards, a nomad. We're talking about Oklahoma State in like 2011, head coach Southern Miss, where they went 0 offensive coordinator at Cleveland, offensive coordinator with the Bucks, to end up offensive coordinator at UGA. Whoever his realtor is making some money. Now, in this particular season, he has a new offensive line coach that joined him, and Matt Luke, who got fired after, I think it's Elijah Hood raised his leg and faked acting like a dog taking a piss on the logo during the Egg Bowl. You lose 4 starters on the offensive line at Georgia. You don't have Dominique Blaylock coming back, so you're begging Kyrus Jackson and Demetrius Robertson to be good next to George Pickens. You have James Cook and Zamir White, who I think are great tailbacks, and you got a bevy of tailbacks back there. And now you're down to JT Daniels, who has not yet been cleared to play tackle football. Stetson Bennett, who gets to wear a UGA jersey, and that's good for him. Carson Beck, who's a true freshman, and Dwan Mathis, who had brain surgery last year and been cleared to play football. Now, Dwan Mathis provides the same sort of threat that store brand Cam Newton did, which is to say that JT Daniels does not. That said, you're installing a new offense, a new scheme at the University of Georgia. And then Todd Monken said this: it's hard because it was only basically 5 days ago as coaches we've been on the field with them throwing a football. Said that last week. I know it's hard to envision when you really think about it that the coaches have not been on the field with our players throwing a football until we started camp without having spring ball. Everything else is on your own when you have a football on the field. So it made it a little bit difficult. Ron, can you imagine having to install your offense with a quarterback that you can't talk to while he throws footballs in basically 3 weeks?
Oh, the offense that I would have to put in there would have to be so simple. You would be playing football math at that point, especially if you're just trying to talk over the phone or through Zoom. Especially whenever you don't have, that he can't throw at his guys. You can't throw any looks at him. I can't imagine. I mean, I could, but whatever I would put on the field wouldn't be very good.
Yeah, because, I was all ready for Georgia to contend for a national championship. And then it did dawn on me how little time these coaches have had. And then that leads me to other guys that, are new that haven't had that much time. Mike Yurcich at Texas inherits a quarterback that's still there, but, they're putting in a new system. And they're still getting into the rhythm of the play calling. Dave Aranda at Baylor has Larry Fedora as an offensive coordinator, but, they get Charlie Brewer back, but I don't expect them to be any good. I feel kind of decent now about Texas Tech because they got the same offense coordinator, the same head coach, and a dude that has started football games for them before blowing up his shoulder. Iowa State is in the same boat there with Brock Purdy and Matt Campbell, and I'll get to that in a little bit. But then I look at the SEC West, which I feel like is a really cool topic for you and I both. Because you got Lane Kiffin at Ole Miss, You got Mike Leach at Mississippi State. We know all about Edo. Jimbo Fisher at Ampersand U. Gus Malzahn at Auburn, and of course, Nick Saban at Alabama. Nick Saban returns not just the starting quarterback that finished the season with him and Mac Jones, but gave Steve Sarkisian, the offensive coordinator, a raise to $2.1 million, which makes him higher paid than all but like 10 FBS head coaches. Now add to that, Jimbo Fisher returns his quarterback and, of course, is the head coach play caller. Gus Malzahn apparently gave the play calling privileges to Chad Morris. I'll be interested to see if they stay in Chad Morris's hands. And they get their quarterback back. But KJ Costello running air raid is interesting for Mike Leach because Mike Leach is, Mike Leach, but also because KJ Costello is built like a pro-style quarterback, which is to be big, strong, and white. So I'm interested to see how this goes. And then you got Ole Miss with Jeff Lebby, who was the offensive coordinator at Central Florida last year, and they were good. And, of course, Lane Kiffin, who I gotta believe is going to be the play caller, but we'll see how that goes. And they have a really, really, really scary decision because they haven't had any time with John Rice Plumlee, and they haven't had any time with Matt Corral, and they're two different quarterbacks. Because John Rice Plumlee is a home run hitter. He is the rare white quarterback with wheels who can't throw, right? It's almost like looking at Joe Webb.
Okay.
John Rice Plumlee also played baseball, not just at Ole Miss, but in Hattiesburg, which I did not know because he's from Hattiesburg. And he joined up with Jerry Ely, who's going to be a great tailback for them and was good last year. And then there's Matt Corral, who can throw the ball, can't run. So what would you want to do in this position? Well, normally, Lane Kiffin would want to pick a quarterback because to let him tell it, and this is my favorite quote that he gave. Yo, I tried to run two quarterbacks at USC once. I got fired. So I don't think I'm going to do that this time. And yet, I don't know which one I'm going to pick because, they're two different style of players, which means I got to build two different offenses using the same terminology. And we saw the two quarterback system, which is the no quarterback system, with Arkansas State, and they got beat down soundly by Memphis, and I hate two quarterback systems. Pick a dude, ride or die with him, because he's not going to get any better if you give him the hook, and the guy that you put in there knows that you don't believe him in the first place. So laying this out, just knowing what you know about Lane Kiffin, knowing what you know about quarterback play, do you start one or the other? And if you do, which one?
I would say that you would put the person out in there that is the best thrower. Who was that again? The one that
Matt Corral. Matt Corral.
So you put him back there because you need somebody that can operate your offense under like optimum conditions, right? So assuming that everybody holds their block and everybody runs their routes, you need to have somebody that can deliver it. And if a play breaks down, you're just gonna have to roll with that as you game plan further into the game. That's who's the best pure quarterback is who I'm throwing back there, especially if I have a whole bunch of unknowns and an offseason that has a little bit of turmoil into it.
I'm with you because I need my quarterback to be accurate when he throws the ball.
Like I don't necessarily need that. I can have
okay.
somebody that's inaccurate. I can have somebody that can play some jazz. But I don't think this is the season to try that out.
Okay. So the symptoms around the season have led you to believe that perhaps you could die. Or it could be asymptomatic and you're not willing to take that risk.
Yeah, you could put it like that. Okay. I think that anybody that has the sharpest, whoever has the sharpest offense going into the season is going to have the best chance of winning the conference.
I mean,
that's it.
Hey man, it's all about rapidly testing. Before you go and throw that quarterback out there, you have to know whether or not that's going to be a positive or a negative for you. Still read. Getting married this year? Organizing a corporate function that needs all the trimmings? Who is Mike Jones Event Planning? Who? Mike Jones. Who? Mike Jones. Who is Mike Jones Event Planning is your premier coordinating and concierge firm. Who is Mike Jones Event Planning coordinates and caters events of all sizes, specializing in graduation parties, theme weddings, bar mitzvahs, quinceañeras, and Kwanzaa. Who is Mike Jones Event Planning wants to make sure that your event goes off without a hitch, and that means chopped and screwed planning ahead now. So put them H-Town Hussies on Front Street. Remember, back then they didn't want you, now you hot, they all on you. To make all your dreams come true, call Who is Mike Jones Event Planning at 281-330-8004. So I want to go back to these conversations about quarterbacks and coordinators and head coaches staying intact. And I'm going to give you a list of that combination that I think is really good. And I'm going to point out some positives and some negatives. And we'll see if you kind of sort of disagree. So, first one is Florida. Kyle Trask comes back to play starting quarterback for Dan Mullen's Florida Gators. And each year Dan Mullen has been head coach, they've won 10 games. They've been good. They've also had a decent defense, even as Todd Grantham's motto seems to be blitz every single down. Every single down. Blitz somebody. Run the grits blitz about 7 times a game. He also was able to recruit really friggin' well. Like, they're good defensively. And then offensively, you got Kyle Pitts at tight end, who might win the Mackey Award even in a regular year. And I mentioned Kyle Trask, but it bears saying, Kyle Trask was not the one for Florida, though he did challenge for the one at Florida. And many people would tell you that was closer than you thought. Then Felipe Franks goes out there, dislocates his ankle, ends up in the portal, and is out at Arkansas. Talk about that in a little bit. But it's also because behind Kyle Trask is Emory Jones. And Emory Jones got enough playing time that Dan Mullins feels good with either one of his quarterbacks. So in this year, where we talked about the symptoms and we talk about how certain death is on the table, it feels like the safe choice to pick to come out of the SEC East to represent in the SEC championship game is probably Florida. If for no other reason than they have everybody returning in a year in which nobody got any reps. I say everybody. They have a lot of people returning in which nobody got any reps. And the team that they can't get over the top of, right, that beat them 3 years in a row, is Georgia. And for the first time in those 3 years, Georgia has some instability at quarterback. Now, the SEC East also has in it Kentucky. I guess we can include the Built. The Vanderbilt. They're rich, and that's about all we can say about them. Tennessee, Jeremy Pruitt, they had 44 players that were out in quarantine or COVID positive because, they can't actually enforce that bubble. But maybe they're decent. Maybe they're okay. And then my favorite team in there that we don't talk about, right, it's not Missouri, though we will. It's Kentucky. Why? Because whenever somebody tells me that Iowa State is good, I remind them Iowa State won 7 games last year, lost 6. And they're like, yes, but Iowa State could be 2020's 2019 Baylor. To which I say, yo, man, Iowa State put together the best passing season in school history last year and scored 400 points for the first time since 2002 last year. Kentucky not only lost their starting quarterback, they got so deep at quarterback, or so shallow at quarterback, I should say, that they moved starting wide receiver who was drafted in the NFL at tailback to play quarterback for half the season, and they won 8 games. So when that team can win 8 games and you're telling me Iowa State, who won 7, has their best season, this is the difference between the SEC and the Big 12, and it's why it's really difficult to ride for this podunk conference. And obviously, they returned somebody. They returned a coordinator as well. They returned Terry Wilson out of Dell City. Stand up. But are you buying the hype that Florida comes out of the SEC East, even knowing what you know about historically how good Georgia has been in the 4 years that Kirby Smart has been running Georgia?
I do. I think they have a great chance of winning the SEC East. I think the only person in their way, like you say, Kentucky is there, and I agree with you. I'd say that if anybody's going to talk about if you're going to have to choose between a second roadblock between Tennessee and Kentucky, it's absolutely going to be Kentucky. That, if they can make it past Kentucky, I think they have a great shot of beating Georgia. But I definitely have to see how Georgia performs at the quarterback. Like, I'd love to see them actually work, because they have the talent to beat Florida again, but if they can't put it together, they can't put any points on the board because they don't have an engine for their offense. Yeah, Florida's a great pick. Like it's, I'm not gonna say far and away. I don't think you could go wrong picking Florida to win the East.
I'm gonna pick Georgia anyway, cause
no, that's good.
Yeah, no,
good.
Yeah, I was about to say I'm gonna pick Georgia anyway. Just Richard LeCount. I mean, Zamir White. If they just want to ride Zamir White, I'm gonna be happy with that. I trust Dan Lanning and Kirby Smart to figure it out on defense. Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and pick Georgia.